Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Wanted to discuss the drastic cuts. The money's been rescinded for NPR and PBS. Okay, so here you're going to first hear from Caroline Levitt, the White House press secretary, and her response when she inquired about the cuts. And then we're going to go ahead and hear from the NPR CEO, and let's discuss the effects that this will have. So let's go ahead and listen to the clips and let's have the discussion.
I want to give you a chance to respond to the CEO of NPR. She's claiming that the cuts to their network will, quote, be a real risk to public safety of the country. Congressman Murkowski has argued that public broadcasting stations save lives. Could you respond to these concerns?
So now she's giving her response.
NPR CEO said cutting NPR will be a risk to public safety. I am not sure how NPR helps the public safety of our country, but I do know that NPR, unfortunately, has become really just a propaganda voice for the left.
We can agree to disagree. What are we afraid of? Now let's hear the Katherine Mayor here, NPR CEO, speak about it. Remember, the floods that happened in Texas, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago? They couldn't have their cell phones and no one was able to sound the alarms. Let's go ahead and listen to the response by Katherine Mayor. Wow.
So here's your opportunity. How does NPR, how would cutting it be a risk to public safety?
So the most important thing for everyone watching to know is that these cuts are not about NPR. They are about the National Public Radio Network. 70% of all of the funds that are at risk right now go directly to local stations. Last night, while the Senate was on the floor debating this exact package, we saw a 7.3 register earthquake hit off the coast of Alaska. 3 stations immediately went into broadcast around tsunami warnings. The local sirens in their hometown told residents to tune in to their local radio station. Our staff in those, not our staff, local staff in those stations stayed on the ground at sea level, putting themselves at risk to make sure that their local residents had the information they need. This is just one of the many ways in which public safety broadcasting plays out in the public media system around the nation on a regular basis.
And if you lose that funding, could those stations in Alaska, for instance, could they be at risk of shutting down completely, or how directly could it impact?
In Alaska, many of the stations receive up to 70% of their funding through federal dollars across the country, often tribal areas, rural areas, 50%. These are areas that are exposed to extreme weather patterns like tornadoes, for example, in Florida along the hurricane coast. Often at risk. We have seen estimates that as many as 80 stations could go dark, and almost all of these are stations that exist in these areas that otherwise have limited resources and limited access.
Okay.
So if they don't get the notification, I guess things will just start happening, and oops, look what happened in Texas in the flooding. And that happened in the wee hours. In the camps, the kids could not have their cell phones. So the cell phones turned off. 24 lives gone. 100+ people died. So if that happened there, and they said, oh, we had no warning, but the cell phones, they said, hey, you could have gotten the warning then. The mayor, they didn't have a system in place. So what is going to happen with this funding, which I'm totally against? Nature will occur. Like she said, tornadoes, what have you, things of that nature. People will be going about their lives, as they normally do, not knowing that, hey, you are in the path of danger. But hey, they saved $3 billion? Really? And I could be wrong about that number. I think it's like, 3 million. 3 million that has been rescinded. NPR and public broadcasting. PBS.
But let's now address this issue of the perceived bias of NPR. I want to play for you a little bit of a conversation I had with Senator Susan Collins. Take a listen.
I'm very concerned about what the impact will be.
And we're going to, I wouldn't play it.
On the emergency alert system in states like Maine. where the system is dependent on public radio. The problem has been NPR, which its own whistleblower, Yuri Berlin, said was extremely biased and that there was no one in the newsroom who was fair to Republicans, is essentially what he said.
So it sounds like if you're not going along with their point of view, cut the funding. That's how I see it. What are we afraid of? We can agree there's in a relationship, personal, husband, kids, boyfriend, your best friend, your neighbor. You are not going to agree on everything. That's not even humanly possible. And if that's the case, it would make life kind of boring. You're going to have disagreements. What are we afraid of? So because they feel that maybe, it's biased toward more liberals, is that the reason to cut the funding? That's how my feelings about it.
I agree with that, but we can defund NPR without disrupting the network of state and local public radio and television.
And when you defund it, what is going to happen is that, unfortunately, people are going to expire. You could have a number of people to expire, and let's be realistic. These are popping out rich people. I'm not saying rich people don't live in rural areas, but the majority, if they don't have the information, they don't have the notification, what will they do? It'll be just like that flood in Texas that came in the wee hour, but they said, oh, we had no notification. And even when it was happening, oh, it was so fast. Oh, we didn't have some kind of horn system in place to alert the people to seek safety. Caught off guard. Wow.
So, to be clear, she voted no against the rescission package. She opposes these cuts, but she is concerned about the perceived bias of your newsroom. What would you tell Senator Collins?
Well, I've had the fortune of thanking Senator Collins for her support and will continue to do so because she recognizes how important these local stations are and how important this funding is. One thing I would note is that NPR's programming makes up, on average, about 25%. That's a quarter of all programming aired by local stations. So really, we're talking about 75% that is reflective of local programming, local needs, and other national programmers. I would say to Senator Collins that we have heard these concerns. We've heard these concerns from her. We've heard these concerns from other members. And we've certainly been talking to our audiences in more than 246 stations across the country to understand what they need out of public broadcasting. We want to make sure that we're available and relevant to the entire American public, regardless of where you sit and regardless of what your political beliefs are. And we've been taking the steps from an editorial standpoint to better understand what audience needs are and have more voices on air that reflect that.
So do you concede that those changes need to be made?
Well, I came in about a year ago, and it was my view that NPR needed a strategy that was really focused on serving the nation. That is not an issue of partisan bias. That is about making sure that as our country continues to change, we remain relevant for all of the different lifestyles that Americans have across the nation, whether you work as a farmer, whether you work in a city. There are so many different experiences that this country has. We need to reflect all of that.
Okay, let's talk now about the immediate impact of this package and the cuts to public broadcasting. Right now, if you're the general manager of a rural station in Iowa or Idaho, how quickly are you going to have to deal with these cuts, and how quickly could you be forced to make tough decisions?
Stations are already dealing with these cuts. We've seen layoffs of journalists, local journalists. Indiana recently cut all state funding for their local public radio stations. The entire Indiana State House News team is now gone. We've seen Florida just cut its state funding, and now Florida stations are making really difficult decisions about what they can sustain. Local journalists are going to be among the first who are at risk. Broadcast coverage will also be at risk. And as I said, we're going to see stations go dark potentially in the next quarter.
What about nationally? Is the NPR newsroom at risk? How soon will you have to make difficult decisions about your staffing at the national level?
It's a great question. I think that we're going to be dealing with those decisions over the course of the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay. And at this point, is there anything else you can do? Is it a situation of where are you concerned that if these cuts go into effect, even if a new administration were to come in down the road or Democrats were to win back the House in the 2026 midterms, will these cuts be difficult to claw back. You can't just restart a station that.
Now listen to what she says, and just real quick, I hate to interrupt. It reminds me of what was happening during the pandemic. Some people were saying, "Oh, for the small businesses that were closing down, you know, they have to start over." And I'm saying to myself, as a person who understands a little about business, it doesn't work that way. You just can't shut something down and then start up all over again. Some people have no concept, don't understand. It's not like you find you another job and just start working again. When you shut down a business, it's not easy just to up and start it again. It's the energy that goes behind it, the working, the planning, the prep. It is not that easy. And as a result, in the pandemic, a lot of little small companies shut down, small business owners, they shut down, never to return again. It is not that easy. So some people think that way, and that's fine. But in the real world, that is not how it works. It's not how it works. So as we're shutting down, let's say next time around you get the Democrats in. And people may think, well, just go ahead and restart it again. Let's listen to her response. And I totally agree.
Shuts down.
You can't just restart a station that shuts down. Once you start punching holes in the national network that serves all Americans.
I'm going to kind of rewind it so you can hear clearly. Yeah, you can't just all of a sudden just restart it.
In the 2026 midterms, will these cuts be difficult to claw back? You can't just restart a station that shuts down.
You can't just restart a station that shuts down. Once you start punching holes in the national network that serves all Americans and has done so for 50 years, you will start to see that those will not be able to come back. This is this is infrastructure that exists that serves difficult topographies in the mountains and in the valleys across the nation. It serves large geographies in some of our most rural communities. Those will start to eventually erode, and they may do so sooner than we think. And unfortunately, that will be difficult to recover.
Okay.
It won't recover. Already, journalists laid off. And I think for PBS, I watch it. It is very informative. So of course, I'm totally opposed. Here we have New York Public Radio and their website, in case you would like to check it out. This is not any kind of paid promotion. But New York Public Radio, I just want to kind of give them a shout out here, who sent me an email. Their website is nypublicradio.org. That's nypublicradio.org. Again, this is not a paid promotion. I want to make that clear. But New York Public Radio, you can donate. And let's see here. Their mission to make the mind more curious, the heart more open, and the spirit more joyful through excellent audio programming that is deeply rooted in New York. Their values: listen deeply and embrace all voices. And that's the whole thing. I think it's one-sided. They're saying, hey, this right here, it seems to be more liberal, so cut the funding. I thought we were America, home of the free, home of the brave. What are we afraid of? A different point of view? So I'm opposed. I'm really opposed to it. And I think it's informative. NPR and PBS, I think they're very informative. Do you have to agree with everything? Of course not. Now, shutting the foreign aid down, not a problem with it. But this here, are you really serious? It could save lives. And again, it is very informative. I cannot imagine PBS not being in existence. I just cannot. I just cannot. I'm really surprised. So this here, if you want to, let's look at a letter here. You may want to check it out for NYPR's president and CEO, LaFontaine E. Oliver. Okay, LaFontaine, Miss Oliver. Feel free to go ahead and check that out. So this here, I think, is just way overreach. I'm totally opposed to it. Again, once this is done, there's no just, let's go ahead and get that started again. Once it's done, it's pretty much done. And it may be harder to find funding. No one is safe. Even reporting the news, even the journalists are not safe. No one is safe in this economy. So let me know what you think. As she said, stations will go dark as soon as the next quarter. Oh, wow. The funding being rescinded, I'm personally appalled by it. Again, I watch PBS. I've listened to radio stations, and the fact that people in rural areas are going to be counting on it, they're depending upon it to be notified of what's going on in their area. If that's gone, what's going to happen then? I guess there won't be any notification. Something could happen, a catastrophe, weather related. And don't forget, look what is happening in the country right now. Don't forget, too, on top of that, so in these rural areas, there will be no notification, no prior warning. You're just on your own. And then when disaster strikes, there's no FEMA. Oh, the state is supposed to handle it. Well, guess what? The states are scrambling. Again, even in Texas, one of the politicians tried to say, oh, they've got a program in place. And the mayor was like, in one location that was affected by the floods. It's like, I have no idea of it. Because, ma'am, FEMA is no longer funded. The money allegedly been funneled to the state. That tells me the state has probably not taken any precautions, set up anything. So if they have the money, where's the money? Where's the funding? I believe that mayor. Have no idea. A politician, what's the saying? If their mouth's moving, they're probably lying. Seriously. So the rural people in those areas, rural populations, depending upon it, to be alerted to what's going on with the weather. The weather just come and just happen, and you're on your own. And then the worst thing, FEMA no longer exists. The states. It won't surprise me if the states have gotten that money and they have no program in place. But of course, it would not surprise me for a politician to possibly lie and say, oh, it's under control, they got a program in place. But how would the mayor not know about the program? That's kind of shocking when those floods occurred in Texas. Interesting. So let me know what you all think. PBS, I think it is necessary. Again, my gosh, I wish people would get it sounds like if you don't agree, if it's too leftist or maybe too right, but it's pretty much they're saying pretty much too left, stop the funding. I'm opposed to it. My friends and I, we voted differently. We don't fall out. We have discussions. We don't get heated. We do not fall out. What are we afraid of? This right here, I am totally opposed to it. I think it is a disservice to the Americans. It is a total disservice. Anyway, let me know what you all think. Thanks for watching. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and share, and I'm out.